Giuliani with America's Mayor Live. And this Hunter Biden thing, I told you, it was just the tip of the iceberg. Tip. So I actually hate to use the analogy iceberg. It was rather insensitive of me when you consider what happened today. I really should have started, because I really was affected by this, about the people who died on that submersible, the Titan. I know there's lots of stuff about, well, they shouldn't have done it and they're very rich and whatever. Come on. Human beings trying to do something different. That's part of human personality that's been there forever. It's part of what makes us so unique. We take on challenges that are often irresponsible or difficult. They certainly didn't deserve to die for it. And I was very, very concerned. I'm feeling somewhat better. It's strange to say this, because I was contemplating the fact that they were missing starting on Sunday. Here we are on Thursday. And if they had actually died because they ran out of oxygen in the submersible, that would have meant that from Sunday until this morning, they were in the dark, locked in, bolted in their seats or whatever you would call it, right? They can't get out, and unable to have any communication, without any knowledge. Are they going to be saved? Aren't they going to be saved? Not being able to eat. Maybe not being able to eat. I'm not sure. Certainly not being able to move in order to relieve yourself. Has to be, with that many people, one or two of them is going to go panic crazy, right? Like lose it. You're locked in. You can't go. You can't go reverse that. You can't go give them a pill, try to calm them down, hold them, maybe knock them out if you have to. All of that is, beyond you. So let me just say, Ted, check the microphone on Getter. There's no light on it, on the receiver there. So now that it turns out that it could be that it exploded based on the pressure, and maybe I'm jumping ahead here, and it may not be. This may not turn out to be the case, but it's starting to look like it. That it exploded when it hit the sea bottom. That would have been pretty much on Sunday, I think, which means they died immediately. And that's what I meant by, that's a way to die, not 4 days of locked in and not knowing what's going to happen to you. Wow. So let's pray for them, okay? Now, getting back to Hunter, I could have told you, and I might have probably in the long recitations I made about the Hunter Biden plea, that this was just going to unravel and unravel and unravel. And it has begun to unravel. I assure you of the following, from what I know, which is probably as much as anyone, maybe a little more than most people. Just based on what I have, which I estimated about 1/3 of the Biden criminality. This is the tip of the iceberg. Even if we consider the $10 million bribe that was revealed by the FBI FD 1023, which they're doing everything they can to cover up. That's the $10 million, $5 by Zlochevsky, to Joe, $5 million, to Hunter, $5 million. Even if we take that into consideration, from what I know, you got about another 40 or 50 million to go in documented bribery payments to the biggest corrupt politician and political family in American history. So each one of them is going to come out. It's not, they can cover it up. They can do what they want, but it looks to me like this group of Republicans in the House is finally the real thing. They're like a steamroller. It's just going to come out on their terms, out. And I don't know if it's on purpose or it's not, but I think it's going to come out, not all at once, but one at a time. So you got a little time to focus on it. You had 2 weeks to focus on the FD 1020. Now, what do we have? We have at least two, and there are a lot more, but we have two coming. They're putting forward right now, IRS whistleblowers, that basically from the inside tell you that the case was fixed completely by Garland's Justice Department. Well, you knew that, but now it's another thing to know, another thing to prove it. They say that from the very beginning, at the very end, the IRS agents, at a minimum, at least wanted felony charges for the IRS charge. Now, from the beginning, they didn't think the case should be confined just to these measly tax evasion counts that probably should not even been part of it. I mean, you got so many things that are. This is like where you got massive numbers of murder and you charge tax evasion. They charged Capone with tax evasion because they couldn't prove the murders. Here you can prove the bribery. So Biden and the campaign of 2020, Kamala Harris attacked him as a racist. And one of the major charges against him were how many black people he had in prison for minor drug charges based on his legislation. But then how about the comparison with, while the hypocrite was doing that, sitting next to him was one of the biggest drug addicts in America. When you look at the hard drive, there can't be too many people alive that took as many drugs as Hunter. Plus, he's been in and out of rehabilitation so often, I can't count the number of times. Now, I don't think much of the tax evasion charge. The charge that was under charged, even just considered by itself, without reference to the whole universe of crime, is the gun charge. He should have gone to jail for that. I mean, and you know what they use as an excuse? I think the Post had an article today, one of them. Well, he got a break because he's a drug addict. But the crime is for a drug addict. The crime is a person who's a drug addict shouldn't be carrying a gun. If you don't prosecute someone carrying a gun because he's a drug addict, you have nullified the congressional statute. You can't do that. I mean, Congress made the determination that if you're going to give a drug addict a break, you're not going to do it in a gun case, right? Because they created a specific 10-year felony for a person who is addicted to drugs carrying a gun, because it's so dangerous for them to carry a gun. And except for Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, there isn't a freaking hypocritical liberal in this country that doesn't agree that the gun law should be strictly prosecuted. I mean, they hysterical anti-gun people are yelling about that all the time. I don't know if you need any more proof that they are a bunch of lying hypocrites, but the fact that they're not outraged at this charge being ignored is this will encourage every drug addict to go get a gun.
Outside of abortion, Mayor, this is the issue liberals talk about more than anything. Gun control.
That's right.
Gun control. But all of a sudden now with Hunter Biden.
Look, they get covered. Things get covered up so much about them that, I don't know if many people even get how hypocritical they were during the pandemic. Newsom telling people to stay in and go into fancy restaurants. The idiot in Chicago getting her hair done, but telling all the women in Chicago can't get their hair done.
Whitmer in Michigan.
Yeah, Whitmer in Michigan with her husband going off on vacations on the lake. Everybody else had to stay home.
Nancy Pelosi
Oh yeah, Nancy Pelosi, absolutely. All of them.
30. She was going to 50 people dinner parties, but she's telling everyone to stay inside.
Well, here what you have here is a crime about which they beat the drum so loud it hurts your ears, and then they get a great example to deter this. And the Bidens are allowed to. I wonder if they got caught for murder, if they would do the same thing. My guess is yes. But so the IRS whistleblower says that FBI FD 1023 that lays out in detail the bribe, which carries with it the suggestion of money laundering, which the IRS investigates, was never sent to the IRS. In other words, the FBI covered it up. Why do we? I was telling someone today, they asked me if I trusted the Justice Department, if I trusted Barr and his Justice Department. I said, do I look like an idiot? They covered up the hard drive. Huh? I'm going to trust them? They had in their possession for about a year evidence of maybe 50 crimes committed by the Bidens. They had in their possession clear proof that the hard drive wasn't Russian disinformation. They let the felonious president we have lie during a debate with Donald Trump. And I guess I get personal about it and personally defame me as a Russian agent. I never corrected it, even though the hard drive definitively corrects it if you released it. So they let me get defamed. They let Trump get defamed, which is far worse in the middle of an election. And they didn't let the American people judge the weight of the hard drive, which is the most damning bit of evidence in a presidential campaign that ever existed. And they rigged the election as a result of that on purpose. And you want me to trust their investigation of vote counting? You want me to trust Barr saying, well, let me make my face fatter. And I found that it wasn't, and I think for this one, Trump should go to jail. This right here. What about you, jerko? Why don't you go to jail for obstruction of justice and holding back the hard drive and hiding it? You know what we call that as prosecutors, as lawyers, which you obviously know? We call it obstruction of justice. That's what we call it. And we call people like you crooks. You and that guy Gray? I don't know. I do not understand why there's not more outrage about the two of you. Withholding the hard drive? Come on.
That's right, Mayor. So 2 whistleblowers are telling Congress that IRS investigators recommended charging Hunter Biden with attempted tax evasion.
Well, that was completely nixed by Garland's corrupt operatives in the Justice Department, probably by him himself, because he'll lie about it. One whistleblower, Gary Shapley, says straight out that the case was influenced by politics. Now, I guess we know that, but it is important to have a witness say that. Another whistleblower who is not yet identified said that he initiated the criminal tax investigation as a special agent with the Internal Revenue Service. He worked with Shapley, and that he was never informed of the FD 1023 that theoretically was sent to the Delaware U.S. Attorney's Office for investigation, which means, if true, Weiss held it back too. That's the one they keep saying. I know, we could play a medley of it. Trump appointed U.S. attorney. Trump appointed U.S. attorney. Trump appointed U.S. attorney. Trump appoint every liberal. You know, they get their little marching orders in the morning, starting with Joe Brainless Scarborough. Trump appointed. Trump appointed. Trump appointed. Some of the people Trump appointed turn out to be crooks. We know that. I don't know about Weiss. It's out for decision making, and I don't know if this is going to go right to Weiss, but according to the whistleblower, the FD 1023, which gave the IRS very, very serious money laundering charges to investigate and tax evasion charges to investigate, like did the 5 million get reported or the 10 million get reported, was never given to them. Now, if it does end up that the guy hold ball is Weiss and he never gave it to him, he's got very serious problems. There is also evidence from the other whistleblowers that Weiss consistently objected to the not being able to do the things he wanted to do in this case. And remember that Garland testified under oath that he never interfered, and the Justice Department never interfered with Weiss and never would. That would create a felony charge of perjury for the Attorney General. And according to Barr, remember, according to Barr, he recently said that the Form 1023 was reviewed by the Western District of Pennsylvania and then was sent on to David Weiss. So we do have Barr, who should be put in front of a grand jury, saying that it was sent to Weiss. Then what happened to it? Was it held back from the IRS? So this is very, very, very serious, because right now, today, this FBI and this IRS that has shown this kind of corruption is still there, still doing what they do, and who knows who they're screwing right now. Who knows what political charges they are now pursuing, or whose life they're trying to ruin, whose house or apartment they're invading, like they did mine, or law office like they did mine. They seem to have no limits in the ability to violate the law in order to pursue their political agenda, because they are no longer law enforcement agencies. They are political secret police and political prosecutors who are working as operatives of the Biden regime. That is clear from the Durham report and from the conduct that we see that's being revealed by the House committee. And here's the difficulty, and not easily resolved. Who do you go to with this? And people ask me, who do you go to with this? The Justice Department. Well, there is no other Justice Department. There's one. The U.S. attorneys and the Justice Department and the FBI. Well, can't you go to the local prosecutors? Well, number one, so by and large, without local laws that were violated, you probably could find some and rig up some kind of charge in some of these jurisdictions. But then how would you get the records? If Barr and Ray wouldn't release them, why do you think Garland would release them? What happens every time the House or Senate tries to get records from the FBI under Ray? He doesn't turn them over. I mean, this one time he did it because they threatened to hold him in contempt. But a state would not have that power. So it sounds like a good solution. Let the state authorities investigate. But there's no reason that they couldn't much more easily block them from investigating than the Congress. So really, our only refuge here is the Republicans in the House using their subpoena power and their power to hold hearings to get this in front of the American people. And I do wish they would start holding hearings. It's one thing. I do like the fact, although probably being impatient the way I am, I'd like them just to put everything out all at once. But I do like the fact that they are doing it in stages. I do think you absorb it better when that happens. And they also seem, I don't think they'd admit this, but they also seem to be looking for opportunities to put it out that relates to something. Like this whistleblower information could have been put out 2 weeks ago when they put out the whistleblowers. But it makes much more news now because it comes in, has a hook, comes in connection with something. And it's not that it's going to be covered the way it should, but it'll get some coverage. It'll get in. You can't completely avoid it. And it's unfortunate they have to think this way, but they have to think this way because we're no longer living in a country of laws. We're living in a country of the Biden regime. And we have to figure out how to go around it, which I've been doing now for 3 years to try to get you information. That's why I'm on this show tonight, to get you information that you wouldn't otherwise get. I seriously doubt, except on Newsmax, that you're going to hear anything about this tonight.
Mayor, when the Republicans were running for re-election in the House, they were promising they're going to defund the IRS, get rid of these 87,000 agents that Biden wanted, whatever. Can they technically do that?
Yeah.
And why didn't they vote to do it? What happened with that? Well, I feel like we wouldn't be in this predicament today if they actually voted to defund the IRS and maybe, put
Well, if they right now they really can't practically defund the IRS because it wouldn't get past the Senate.
Right.
And then he would veto it if it did. So it's silly to play that card if you're going to get just slapped in the face. It's much better to do the investigative pressure and to keep reducing it, and let the new agents know they're going to be under heavy scrutiny. Plus, before those agents can really do damage, they're going to have to be there a couple of years. And as you know, in law enforcement, you got to learn the ropes. And they could do some minor damage, but they're going to need 2 or 3 years of experience before they can start. I mean, I believe they're hired just to go after conservatives. I don't think there's any intention of collecting the taxes. I mean, we collect plenty of taxes anyway. I mean, nothing wrong with our tax collections. Even with the cheating and that goes on, we still collect enormous amounts of taxes. Those people aren't there because we're not collecting taxes. Those people are there because they want a big army to focus on their political enemies. So that's one where soon we win in 24. We get a Republican House and Senate. We should be able to stop them before they do too much damage, and just keep an eye on them right now. And it does seem that unlike the FBI, the IRS is opening up. Now, it could be the FBI has too. I don't have any problem reporting this because it wasn't told to me in confidence. I have been told that they have just as many FBI whistleblowers as they do IRS whistleblowers. A little bit of that has come out, but that disclosure hasn't really come out in full. Now, I can't vouch for that. That makes sense, though. It doesn't make sense to me that significant numbers in the IRS are revolting against the conduct that's completely inconsistent with the oath they took, and not FBI agents, because FBI agents, in my view, are the top. And I can't believe that once the dam opens and the first couple of them come along, there's a lot of them that I think would love to tell you what's been going on. And there's never been great love between field offices and the Washington office anyway. I mean, there's always been tremendous friction. Even during the Clinton case, the New York office was absolutely convinced that she should be prosecuted, and almost in revolt over the fact that she wasn't. Considered Comey to be a traitor.
Mayor. All right. So who controls the U.S. Navy? Who has the final say on what comes out of the U.S. Navy in terms of communications? Is it eventually the president, the White House?
Right? Eventually the president. Right? The president is the commander in chief.
Well, we would like your.
I mean, very rarely would it get to that level. That decision gets made at the Joint Chiefs of Staff level, the Secretary of the Navy, the commanding officer of the Navy, just Secretary of Defense.
Something to consider, Mayor. We're hearing some chatter. Apparently, the U.S. Navy heard what it believed was the submersible imploding days ago. So the U.S. Navy is now saying, well, we heard what we feel that we knew about this basically imploding when it happened. Why would they? And people are saying and asking, why did the U.S. Navy wait to reveal this until now?
I heard that also. I heard that before, possibly on Newsmax, that there's a report that, in fact, I looked at it at a different point of view. It made me feel a little better because I felt like these people didn't suffer for a long time, if that in fact happened. I would just be careful with that because it may have taken them a while to unravel it and understand what it was.
To confirm.
I mean, these, if I understand it correctly, these are this is surveillance technology that exists to track submarines. And, it keeps improving as the submarines become more subtle and more devious and harder to track. No, Sunday. The day they actually say they heard the noise was Sunday. What I'm trying to determine, but I think is correct, the day it landed on the floor of the ocean was Sunday, late in the afternoon or early evening. And it seems like now this is, don't hold me to this because this is speculating and trying to put this evidence together. If it is them, it probably sounds like when it finally hit the bottom, the pressure of the ocean split it open and it exploded. And they say it could be just a slight little flaw in the seal of there was a submarine commander being interviewed who said, one of the things you do with a submarine every time it comes back is you literally minutely examine it under it. You go under it. I guess they do it with divers, or maybe they take it out and put it in dry dock. And they literally go through it by eye, 2-3 people, so they're sure, and look for every nick and close it, because the slightest little hole can blow the thing up. Because then if the hole will break the seal, the protection against the pressure from the ocean is gone. And now in a big submarine, it would have to be a pretty big hole.
Right.
But still, they'll worry about any hole, because it could start off as a little hole, and by the time you finish with a voyage at the very end, it could be a big hole. Something like this would not need a big hole, a nick. And the question is, in fact, the admiral was asked, would a vessel like this get the same kind of scrutiny? And the answer, as a one of our great submarines, the answer is no. It wouldn't. I mean, the people doing it are not as expert. It takes probably a impulsive, obsessive compulsive to do this. You got to look for every single thing. But this was at least one theory, that the pressure from the ocean, because there was a flaw that had developed in the seal, led to an explosion, which left part of the craft right there, and then a debris field, because it just didn't crack open like an egg with one part here and one part here. It came open and then it exploded, which is also why they doubt they're going to recover remains.
Well, Mayor, there's actually some sick leftist news organizations out there that all they had to say about these poor souls is that one of them was a big Trump GOP donor. That's literally like not rest in peace, nothing like that. That's literally all they had to say about the submarine. So I find that's very distasteful. Disgusting. It's disgusting.
It tells you that we have, in part, shared by a certain percentage of the country, a sickness.
For sure.
We have a psychological illness with regard to the way people view Donald Trump. Trump derangement syndrome might end up being listed in the DSM-5 as a mental illness. And I'm not being funny. I mean, I've listened to people and watched people who I am convinced are mentally ill on the subject of Donald Trump. They've made him into whatever. I mean, I know his alleged flaws, and I'm gonna do what lawyers do very often in deciding whether to dismiss a case, or judges do. You assume everything said about him is true. Every single thing said about him is true, except the things that obviously are untrue, like Russian collusion, and that he's a Russian agent, and that he peed on Obama's bed, and that kind of ridiculous crap that Hillary Clinton paid for. Who did he hurt? Who did he hurt?
Exactly.
Gosh almighty, African Americans and Hispanics and minorities had the biggest salaries they ever in history. They had the least unemployment. Their education was substantially better than it is now. Our country was presiding, clearly was the key critical country in the world. China was not challenging it the way it challenges it now. And that challenge was being matched by specific actions that Trump was taking against China that were economically hurting China. Now what we have is Biden does everything for China, and then like a little boy calls them names. You know, he lets them get away with COVID. He lets them get away with fentanyl. He lets them, he takes away an air base that's 400 miles from them. And then he goes like a little boy and says, dictator, dictator, which, by the way, is stupid. Trump does exactly the opposite. He sort of deals with them with a certain amount of respect and then is very hard on them, which is why they respected him and didn't do the things they're doing now to Biden, because they don't respect him. So I don't get how people, despite the fact that they may be turned off by what they think is his personality, the practical results are starkly different.
Well, Mayor, let's pick up this conversation in a little bit. Let's play our ad, and right when we come out of our ad with Kirk
That'd be a good
Elliott,
introduction
PhD,
for Kirk. Good.
We're going to have
For
our
those who
friend
haven't
Kirk.
heard it before, and for those who haven't, it'd be a good reminder to act now. Faith and family, freedom and finance are four things that we would do anything to protect. I trust the team at Kirk Elliott, PhD, Private Advisors, with providing the advice and sound strategies to take advantage of the inflationary pressures, the high interest rates, and the international challenges we face today. The Kirk Elliott team, with over 29 years of experience, shares our values and believes in people over profit. They can help you protect your finances from the big government policies that are out of our control. So what's in our control? The decision to act or not to act is within our control. I encourage you to act. Call Kirk Elliott, PhD, Private Advisors today. Start working with a team that will help you protect your retirement assets with gold and silver while sharing your desire to protect your faith, family, and freedom. Call them today, 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900, and tell them Rudy sent you. Or simply fill out a request for a free consultation at kirkelliottphd.com/Rudy. Weiss has got a lot of explaining to do. He really does. We're back on, and we're going to go to my friend and your friend, and take advantage of that because he is your friend, Kirk Elliott, and make that call. Kirk, how are you?
I'm good, Mayor. How are you?
I'm okay. Tell us how we are.
Well, economically, we've got some global issues happening and we've got some domestic ones. So domestically, there's a leading economic indicator index, which measures everything from jobless claims to basically building permits, let's see, average workforce, holiday changes, everything. I mean, it's like every leading economic indicator that we have, it's down for the 17th month in a row. So
17th month in a
row. 14th month in a row. And the indicators show that at least for 17 months, they're expecting decline. So it's like, I thought that Biden was doing a good job, right? Like, at least
that's what he says. He says that.
That's what he says. Yeah, he says, but what we're seeing is absolutely the opposite. See, because here's where, okay, let's put this into perspective. Last week, the inflation numbers came down to 4%, like we talked about, but they came from 5.8%. So this is more than a 25% decrease in the basically alleged inflation rate, right? But if you went to the grocery store last week, Mayor, was groceries 25% less expensive? If you went to go buy a car, was it 25% less expensive than it was the month before? If you went to go get gas at the gas pump, was it 25% less than a month before? No, it wasn't. So they're cooking the books like they usually do, right? Because they couldn't raise rates again right now because America is tapped out. They're living at the margin. They can't do anymore. But this is the catch-22. If you didn't raise rates, then inflation is going to persist. If you raised rates to slow down inflation that they're creating, Well, now the problem is people who carry debt, which is everybody,
Right.
are going to feel the pinch and stop buying. So it's a lose-lose situation. And what they decided this time was to not raise rates. But here's a guarantee in a world where there's no guarantees, right? Is that next month they're going to have to raise rates because inflation is going to persist because they didn't do it this time, right? Because central banks this week around the world, the United Kingdom raised rates by 0.5%. Switzerland raised rates by 0.25%. Norway raised rates by 0.5%. Turkey raised rates by, get a load of this, 6.5%.
What?
Yeah,
What?
raised it to 15% because inflation is persisting so badly.
Wow.
So we're getting to a point where country after country after country has to raise rates to slow down inflation. And it becomes competitive currency devaluations at that point, which is why I'm predicting that they're going to have to raise rates the next time another quarter or more because inflation is going to persist. So this is what we're seeing just this week, right underneath our nose. But I have to tell you something really creepy, Mayor. I mean, this is actually creepy. So 2 days ago, the United Nations came out with their report because they're meeting right now in some city in China. They're planning digital IDs linked to bank accounts. So here's what this means. So this plan, which was basically uttered by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres in his vision for the future, and he has this common agenda for the world. Well, might be their common agenda, not mine, right? So
Yeah, I mean,
it's
absurd. Like a one world economic plan, like we're all the same.
It is, but get a load of their policy briefs from this agenda, which are called a Global Digital Compact, Reforms to the International Financial Architecture, and the Future of Outer Space Governance. So, truly, space cadets, right? These are the people that are unelected bureaucrats that are running the financial future for our world. But here's what's interesting about their policies that they said are going to come into effect by September of 2024. So we're about 1.25 years away from this, but here's the report. Digital IDs linked with bank or mobile money accounts can improve the delivery of social protection coverage and serve to better reach eligible beneficiaries. So like you would as a good lawyer, let's break down these words and what they mean. Who are eligible beneficiaries? It's everybody in the world with a bank account. That's what that means. What is improving the delivery of social protection coverage? Okay. Now, if we look back to the last couple of weeks when we've talked about central bank digital currency, the ability to cut you off from buying or selling if your digital social profile, social credit score, ESGs, if you're a company, doesn't add up to what they want you to have, they'll cut you off from buying or selling. Then last week, we talked about the Bank of International Settlements coming out with their 2 new projects, which basically use of funds doesn't match up with their ideology. And lastly, the real-time monitoring of every transaction of every person, company, at every bank in every country around the world. So if you've got real-time monitoring to supposedly fight money laundering, and you attach that to their agenda of meeting up with their ideology, that now gives a purely defined definition of social protection coverage. So let's give some examples. What if these globalists didn't like the political party that you belong to? Let's just say you wanted to donate to a Trump campaign.
Very likely they the type of people they are, they wouldn't like what I want to do. Right.
Oh, you're cutting out. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Yeah. You can't hear me?
Great. Okay. No, I can now. There's like robot voices. It's like, oh boy, they're trying to stop it. But anyway, let's say you were giving
I hear
to
you
the
fine.
Trump campaign. And they'll say, what? That campaign, that's not with our social plan for the world. We're going to cut people off from donating that. What if they don't like the church that you tithe to? They'll say, well, we have to implement our social protection coverage. What if, Rudy, you drive a gas guzzling truck and your carbon footprint's too big? And they say, we have to protect the people of the world from these anti-environmentalist people who are destroying the earth. And so we're going to cut them off with our social protection coverage platforms. See, this is what is coming by September of 2024. So How then do we get out of that system, right? How do you stop being a digital slave in their digital world that they're creating? These aren't my words, Mayor. These are their words. They're not even hiding it anymore. They're just saying, we are going to command control through these mechanisms, the ability for people to buy or sell whether we like them or not, right? It's like this, they're telling us. And so I'm shocked that there's not more opposition, but we're starting to get opposition to that because you've got states like Florida, states like Texas, states like Arkansas, Utah, Wyoming, Oklahoma, that are now saying gold is legal tender. They're looking at central bank digital currency. And we're not going to play this. We're going to have another alternative currency system that comes up and rises up parallel to this system, this egregious system of cutting off your financial freedom and your privacy freedom by saying what you can buy or sell. So when states are doing that, we can do the same thing
and should
as individuals by buying gold or silver, right? Physical silver that you take delivery of, you can beat them at their own game.
And it's, I mean, people should understand this, but I think worth making the point that should they succeed in this endeavor, gold and silver would be unaffected by it.
Well, yeah.
Actually, it wouldn't be unaffected. It become much more valuable, actually, right?
It would go through the roof.
Right.
It would absolutely.
Well, it's going through the roof right now.
Yeah, it wouldn't be affected in a bad way.
Yes, right.
It would act as a propellant to move it through the ceiling.
Or it would be, I mean, obviously, it's a way to protect yourself against what is obviously not only coming, but has already come and is in motion.
Yeah, 100%. This isn't some kind of a movie script. This isn't like Hunger Games in this dystopian future. This is happening right now, and people need to understand that these laws that are actually coming into play, that are coming to us by unelected global bureaucrats. They weren't elected, but yet somehow they get to determine the financial future for country after country after country after country. It's like, so I think you're going to start to see the rise of states' rights here, the rise of banking rights, and I think that the global economy is about to change overnight.
And do you find that people are beginning to react to it? You said that some states are doing it. Do you find that more individuals are starting to realize this?
Well, yes, sir. I mean, our phone lines ring off the hook.
And the phone is, let's give it to them, 720-605-3900. It's up on the screen, but just in case, that's the number to call. And there you'll get Kirk or one of his experts, and they'll be able to take what he's saying now and apply it to you because, frankly, Kirk practices what he preaches. No one economic plan can apply to the whole world, every country in the world. No one economic plan can apply to every American, right? I mean, it's different for all of us. We all have different expectations, needs, ability to diversify, and you've got to tailor that to an individual's need so that they don't make a mistake.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
Well, that was very, very helpful, Kirk. Thank you very much, and you have a happy weekend. And we'll talk to you next week. Boy, that was a great explanation. I very appreciate it very much. And it was a really good explanation. And it's something. Time to stop. This is something where you got to stop talking about it and you got to do it, because it's the kind of thing you want to put off, and it's hard to believe. And this is I didn't make it clear while Kirk was on the phone. He usually does. I will. This is a free, no obligation consultation. If you want to listen to it and ignore it, fine. But I'm going to tell you, whether you buy in and subscribe or buy gold or silver, or you don't, or you buy some, the explanation alone will help you focus. 720-605-3900. You can also contact them online, but it really makes more sense to call, because this is the kind of thing where you at least have to give them at the beginning, and then as you get to know them better and feel confident more, but you got to give them some basic information so they can tailor a plan roughly that fits you. And then they can do a plan that is exactly you, as you have more of a relationship with them and you want to give them as much information as you want to give them. But nobody's being alarmist about this. This is reality. What Kirk described, I could give the same description in terms of not just our economic system, our political system. They want one world. That's the goal here. The goal for who wants it? Obama, absolutely, without any doubt, Soros. I don't have to guess at that. He's written it. He's written articles and actually part of a book in which he talks about how American nationalism is so destructive, and we really need one world governance. And Kurt Schwab of who I guess is, I have no idea how he's become such a theoretically great economist. I don't know that he's ever done anything with the economy that's worth anything except make ridiculous predictions. Well, by the way, the Swedish girl Sundberg, I saw that she predicted this. This was one of the dates she predicted the end of the world. So I want you to have that become another big question mark as to whether or not the way in which they're presenting this climate change thing, the hysterical lefties, isn't a big con job to make money, so that weird Kerry and wacko Gore can become billionaires. Huh?
Oh, Mayor, wasn't the Democrats thing we're going to freeze to death first, and then now we're going to
that was a while
roast
back.
to death?
Well, according to Gore, the southern America, southern part of America should have been gone in 2010 or 2015. We should be all flooded now. And
Right.
I don't know. I was down in Florida. It didn't look like it was flooding, and I talked to people in Texas, and they're not flooding, and that's all going to be gone. I think he was hoping they'd be gone so he could get elected, but people were smart enough not to elect that weirdo, and instead we elected a bigger weirdo. But so here, I mean, here's another. I don't know if where Biden is doing the most damage. If he's doing it in destroying our absolutely essential criminal justice system that was considered to be the fairest in the world, and now I don't know where it would rank in the world, but it would have to be somewhere in the bottom half, particularly if you're a Republican, a conservative, or a Trump supporter. They're coming after you. They're hiring 85 million or billion or whatever the hell it is dollars worth of IRS agents to come after you if they don't have enough now. Look at the amount of money they spent on the J6 investigation, more than any investigation I think in our history, for a crime that was worse than September 11. Huh? Worse than Pearl Harbor, they said. Worse than the Civil War, I think. It was the insurrection that took place in the mind of Nancy Pelosi without a gun.
Mayor, we were just this close to losing democracy that day.
We didn't lose it that day, but we've lost it now. We don't have it right now. We're not really a democracy.
So, Mayor, with your career, right? You ran the Southern District of New York. You're the top prosecutor. Did you ever think you'd see the day where we're sitting here literally wondering what recourse do we have? You can't. It seems like you can't really go to anyone in the federal government. Did you ever think you'd see the day?
Well, I mean, I saw the day when I first started dealing with the Biden allegations, and I couldn't go to the Justice Department. I couldn't go to the U.S. Attorney's Office. I couldn't get the Congress to be interested in it, and I was on my own. And I never thought I would see that day that I could have credible, supportable allegations of massive bribery at the highest levels of government. And not only that, I couldn't get my government to respond to it, and they put me in jeopardy. Put me in jeopardy. A criminal prosecution, searches, seizures, examining my businesses for 20 years. I'm still going through the aftershock of that. No, I never thought I would see that day.
And there's really no game plan on how to deal with this, right? I mean, would you say that we've lost a portion of our country
right now
we are in a position where
right now, if you have a credible, there are 50, you have a credible allegation, of which there are about 50 serious crimes against the president of the United States, there's nowhere to go with it, where you're not going to have happen to you what happens to all these whistleblowers and other people and people like me if you come forward with it. You're going to be hurt. You got to be willing to be hurt. Yeah, I don't know if you listened to the testimony of the FBI agents who testified a few weeks ago, but all of them are basically starving. They've been thrown out of their jobs. They're not allowed to take another job. They keep getting switched from one place to another. Their kids their families are being ripped apart. And this is all being done because they came to the Congress and said the FBI, using shorthand here, is fixing the Biden investigation. Now, first of all, we all know that's true. That's a big shock. These guys are being tortured because they're the witnesses to what we all know. And this stupid case that they brought, they've been investigating that 5 years for 2 misdemeanor counts and a gun count that you don't even go with. You do a juvenile pretrial diversion. There was a lawyer on a podcast today that handles many, many gun cases, and he said he never heard of pretrial diversion in a gun case.
Well, Mayor, I was going to ask you that question. What is stopping every single criminal defense lawyer now whose their clients have the same charges as Hunter Biden to going to a judge and getting their clients freed on this sweetheart deal? What's stopping them?
Nothing's stopping them, but a judge isn't going to, just because an injustice was done in one case, there's no legal requirement. In other words, you can't go before the court and say, well, Hunter Biden got pretrial diversion for the gun charge, therefore I am legally required to get it. The act of doing that could be corrupt, but it doesn't get applied to you. It isn't like it would not be considered discrimination. What is, I think, clear is because there's so many. I think Trump's case by the Justice Department should be thrown out because it's delayed. I'm not even saying it's the culmination. I think they got 2 or 3 more chapters yet to go. But it's just like the 5th chapter in a book that's just got to be stopped, which is framing Donald Trump. I mean, the organization bringing this and the organization investigating it is the same organization that deliberately investigated a false charge that they knew was false, kept it from the American people. How can and this case itself has any number of irregularities on the part of the prosecutors. How can you not dismiss this case? It's the progeny of an entirely corrupt Justice Department, and I think that does apply to that case, but it wouldn't apply to like a case, let's say in California, where a guy got caught for guns and they put him in jail for 2 years, which is what they usually do. It's unfair as hell, and it shows you how we no longer have a justice system. But I don't think that argument would work. I think at some point, though, the whole house is going to fall down on them. I do. I think that because I thought that would have happened by now. So I have to admit to you, I've been wrong about it. I probably 3 years ago never would have thought they get carried as this far. But they do have a tremendous amount of protection. You can't underestimate that. Having every broadcast news medium, meaning not cable, that will censor whatever hurts you and magnify whatever helps you, can create a great air of unreality among the people. It surprises me that as many people kind of partially get it as they do, which means that alternative media, which I would consider us part of, I think that's what we're doing, is working. So you end up with a poll where 62% of the American people believe that the prosecution of Trump is political. Well, it is. Probably should be 100%, but it's 62%. That's pretty good when you consider that if you watch just broadcast television and you read the New York Times, I don't know where you would come up with that idea. There's nothing on ABC, CBS, NBC. There's nothing in the major newspapers that leads you to any other conclusion about the Trump prosecution, that it was the worst crime ever committed by any human being, even though they can't quite describe the crime. It's like Russian, even before we found out there was no Russian collusion. Russian collusion wasn't a crime. There's no crime called Russian collusion. Conspiracy is a crime to commit a specific crime. And the crime that they were they always kind of use a crime and distort its meaning. Do you know what they were investigating him for there was a campaign violation? Russian collusion, they bastardized into a crime by saying that, and listen to this trick, by saying that foreigners cannot contribute money to a campaign. Therefore, if Russians helped him by giving him information, that was a contribution to the campaign that wasn't disclosed and beyond the limits, the campaign limits. Now, more than half of the experts say that isn't a crime, including ultimately Mueller, that there's a difference between a contribution of money, which you can quantify, and the supplying of information. That supplying of information cannot be a campaign finance violation because you can't put a definitive value on it. So the point that I'm making is even what they framed him with probably would have turned out not to be a crime because it's a created crime. It's one that more scholars than not believe doesn't exist and would have been fought out in the courts as to whether we're going to create a new crime to apply to Trump. Kind of like what they're doing, with deciding that they're going to use obstruction of justice, and rather than the Presidential Records Act, which is the thing that applies directly to President Trump, that contains no criminal penalty. So they go reach out for other things that have criminal penalties and say, even though Congress hasn't provided criminal penalties, we're going to apply these other statutes, which we say apply, but Congress hasn't clearly said apply. That may get thrown out for not being a crime also.
That's right. Well, Mayor, how about we take at least one call tonight?
I wish we can. I wish we take more than one.
Well, we can take a couple. We certainly can. Let's start off with Matt in Paris, Texas. Not to be confused with Paris, France. Matt, you're on with the mayor.
How are you?
Do what?
How are you?
I'm doing good besides the way the country's going.
Well, me too.
I was calling today to, I talked to you one time before, I think, to find out what is it going to take to end this problem of corruption. I mean, like Hunter getting off so scot-free with his taxes, and, you know, you don't see anything on the live news, which you won't because it's all fake news. And then Joe, the stuff that comes out about him today, with him, you know, there's too much proof for nobody to be doing anything. And I mean, I don't want to down my Republican Party for it, but why does it take the Republican Party so long to get an investigation where the Democratic Party, they can do it just bam, bam, bam?
Okay. Very good questions, Max. First of all, you're absolutely right. It's not even, you know, they say where there's smoke, there's fire. This isn't smoke. This is fire. And it's plenty of fire, and the fire has been on for years. And the only reason they're not in jail now is because our country is corrupt. Our justice system is corrupt, and our press is even more corrupt. So the necessity to do this, you realize it, but many Americans don't because they're not told the truth. I would say that the jury is out, and probably not even out, more in their favor on the Republican Party. First of all, they didn't have control until now. So there's nothing they could have done beyond what they did, which is complain before. Senator Johnson and Senator Grassley did remarkably heroic work in beginning this when it was just them, and therefore starting it in Congress. And now Coomer and Jordan are, yes, they're doing it slowly, but I can see a strategy to it.
Great, that's a good question.
Because and it may be that when it was originally put out, there was so much information, it was hard for people to grasp it all. The value in putting it out piece by piece is they get a week or so to absorb it. And this may be a little complicated, but if this country had freedom of speech like we used to have, this would be grasped much faster because you'd hear about it on television. It'd be reported on, for example, today, the whistleblowers coming forward from the inside and telling people what a lot of them suspect, that the Justice Department fixed the case. This is essentially what these whistleblowers have said. One gave his name, the other didn't. This would be all over the evening news on broadcast television. And it would be the headline in the Washington Post and the New York Times and your local newspaper. It's not going to be. This is going to have to be gotten the way you and I got it. I don't know where you got it from. Maybe you got it from Newsmax. Maybe you got it from one of the 10 or 15% of the newspapers that covers it. Some people may get it from me or from Steve Bannon, but you're not going to get it from the vast majority of the news outlets. So it takes longer to absorb.
Right.
But once it gets absorbed, it works. So I would say right now, if they don't get everything out, you have a right to complain. But if they do what I think they're going to do, I think you're going to be satisfied that it's going to get out and it's eventually going to bring the house down.
Well, Mayor, we have Heather from Massachusetts on the line. This is going to be the last call of the night because we're going to get into soccer time. She has an interesting question for you. Heather, you're on with the mayor.
Oh, hello, Mayor Rudy. I'm so thankful that I got through. I can't believe it. We love you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Heather. That's I appreciate it.
We really do. Oh, it's my pleasure. And your whole team, everyone is so kind, and it's a pleasure to talk with you. Well, my question tonight has to do with Bill Barr and his daily rants about President Trump. Recently, he's said that President Trump will be indicted over January 6th. And what I want to know is if they're going to pursue President Trump over January 6th, then what about the attorney generals in states all over the country where their cities and states suffered significant damage during the Black Lives Matter and Antifa riots? More damage, I think billions of dollars worth of damage. And we have Nancy Pelosi demanding essentially that there would be uprisings all over the country. We have Kamala Harris on record encouraging these riots to continue. We have Maxine Waters calling for anyone to get into a Trump supporter space, and just we have a lot of evidence.
Sure do. Plenty of evidence.
Where Democrats have literally called for uprisings and for chaos and for damage. And so I'm asking you, where these attorney generals around the country, if they're going to take a tweet or something from Donald Trump that says we have to fight or we have to organize, very simple, normal campaign language, if they're going to use that to bring about an indictment for a former president, then I think that attorney generals need to hold these politicians responsible for the damage that was suffered in their own states and in their own cities.
Well, thank you, and I think that that's an excellent question. The answer to that is there are two right now, and we've got to change it. There are two systems of justice in this country, and you're illustrating it. Are they going to indict a president? They haven't done it. Are they going to indict Donald Trump for some responsibility for January 6th? They certainly are investigating him for that. I'm going to say I don't think they are, but of course I'm an optimist, and I can see how there's no case. There are other things they're considering indicting him for, right? On the federal level and in Georgia. All of them are equally strained interpretations, and just how many of them do they want? I don't know. if they were to indict him on the Georgia charges, whether it would be in the federal level or the state level, that's him laying out his arguments for why he believed that he was being cheated in Georgia. He had a right to believe that. He had a right to pursue that. He didn't threaten anyone. And when he said to Ratzenberger, "Can't you find 11,000 votes," which they try to make it into go create them, whether they like it or not, what he meant, and really whether he was right or wrong, I believe he was right. What he believed was that there were conceivably 100 or 200,000 already pretty well established either false votes, questionable votes, votes that could be challenged. And he was saying, can't you find at least 11,000 out of that when you have so many and you're just not investigating them properly, which he believed was the case. He was told by Georgia and by the Justice Department they were being investigated, but he had every reason to distrust the Justice Department. After all, by that time, he knew it was the Justice Department that double-crossed him and withheld the hard drive. And once they did that, there's almost anything that they would do, almost anything you could conceive they would do. Couldn't in a million years conceive that an attorney general and a director of the FBI would hold back evidence, and it certainly contains evidence, whether you want to believe it or not, it's evidence of about 50 crimes by Biden. It contains evidence that directly contradicted Biden saying that this was obtained, that his people obtained it as from the Russians. Contains direct evidence that disproves that. And the Attorney General of the United States had it and held it back until I put it out. It didn't come out from them. It came out from me and Bob Costello through Mac Isaacs or from Mac Isaacs. And when I put it out, I was condemned, investigated, threatened. You can't believe what was done. So the point that I'm making is I don't see how the Georgia case can go anywhere. It's as phony as these other cases. And January 6th, I don't know how you get charged for a riot when you tell people to go there peacefully and patriotically. I mean, those were the last words he spoke to the people that were there. And it's questionable that the people that were at the speech had anything or much to do with what happened at the Capitol, because it already started before Trump finished his speech. So I could go into all of this and point out to you that the charges that remain are as far-fetched and as politically motivated as the ones that have already been brought. And I don't know, maybe they're at the point where they can realize, at least from the point of view of the Republican primary, they're nominating him. Maybe their calculation is, you want to nominate him because we can beat him. I would tell you the following. Be careful. You calculate that. Almost every time I can think of where somebody wanted an opponent, the opponent defeated them. Jimmy Carter wanted Ronald Reagan, not George Bush. I don't know if George Bush would have beaten him in 1980, but Ronald Reagan kicked his ass. Let me think of another one like that. Oh, the Democrats wanted Donald Trump in 2016. He beat them. We wanted Obama in 2008. Republicans thought Obama would be easier to beat than Hillary Clinton. Well, Obama beat us and we beat Hillary Clinton. So the worst calculation about who should be your opponent is you. And I think they're doing that to themselves. There are a whole bunch of Republicans that are very good, but there's only one Republican who has actually done what the country needs right now and has proven he can do it. If you just so if you compare America now to America then, and you use the Reagan formula, are you better off now than you were then? The answer is, in almost every respect, we are much worse off. In fact, we're in crisis now, international. Well, we want somebody that's going to get us back to where we were and then better. Who's better to do that than somebody that's proven they can do it? DeSantis hasn't done that. My good friend, Senator Scott, hasn't done that. Either Senator Scott. I understand the other one is thinking of running too, and he's a very good man. But none of these people have done that. Someday, will some of them do it? I believe so. I think we have a couple of really good presidents there. But we have a proven one that can put us back where we were quicker than any of them. And just the mere fact that DeSantis says, I'll need 8 years to do it. And Trump says, what are you kidding? I'll do it in 6 months. You get an idea of the different spirit of the person, which, having worked for President Reagan, I can tell you the spirit of a president. I know I'll need some time to explain that to you. It's probably the most important thing, because that's what creates the leadership and the movement of people. Even people who didn't like Trump knew the country was moving in a positive direction when he was president. And they know in their hearts, whether they'll admit it or not, that a lot of people are dead because of the mistake made with Biden. All those people in Ukraine would be alive today. There's no way Putin would have invaded. And I'll challenge anybody on that one. I think Putin would even admit that.
Mayor, what you just said, isn't that another argument for President Trump that has nothing to do with President Trump himself? Isn't there the argument that this man, people need to support this person to overcome the injustices that have been done in this country?
He's the only person that we can be. He's the only person we can be sure will do it. Not that the others might not want to do it. We don't know if they have the capability to do it.
Not even that, Mayor. But if he fails, it shows that they have the power to take down a sitting president, and that they have the power to keep this man from winning. Right? I mean, yes, we need him to do it. Right? Like, we almost look. The victors write history.
I'd have to think about that.
History is written by the victors, and unfortunately, the good guys don't always win.
I don't know if I like the negative part of that. If you don't elect them, you should. I think you win an election on what people think you can do, not what will happen if you're not elected. So I would stick with. In fact, I would at this point make it a one-issue campaign. I'm the only one who can assure you we'll be back where we were, and we'll be doing better. Everybody else can promise it. Nobody else has done it. I've done it. You got nothing to lose by going with me. And I don't know. If you don't like my personality, he can either say, I'll try to work on it, or, just accept it. I'd rather have all those people in Ukraine alive than be happy or unhappy with the president's personality. After all, this guy doesn't have any personality. He doesn't even have a personality. I mean, at least Trump had a personality. He could tweet, and we could see what he was thinking and saying. This guy, he'll tweet out, "God save the Queen," or give me my ice cream, and please somebody feed me," or am I in Cambodia or Colombia, or is my uncle alive or dead? Or, I mean, if you don't know that this man is mentally incompetent to carry out the duties of President of the United States, you better do some supplementary education. You're not in really good shape to do your job, make really rational decisions. I mean, he's screaming out at you every time you see him on the screen when they show you. He's falling down. He's saying things that are idiotic and absurd. I can't imagine what world leaders think when they talk to him one-on-one.
That's right, Mayor. That's right. We are well into soccer time. And why don't you tell your viewers and listeners where we will be tomorrow?
Tomorrow, we're going to be in the great state of Michigan, specifically right outside of Detroit. We're getting ready for a big gala on Sunday night, which may be one of the biggest dinners ever, because Donald Trump is going to be there. He doesn't say this anymore. I wish he would say it's going to be a huge dinner. Huge. It's going to be huge.
Y-U-G-E. Huge.
Somebody, it wasn't me. Somebody must have told him to stop saying that. I always like that. It'll be, he used to say to me, "Rudy, you can't believe it. You can't believe it. When you see this crowd is huge." And then it wasn't huge. It was huge. I've never seen, I will tell you this truthfully. I've been involved in lots of presidential campaigns, my own and other people's. I've never seen crowds like Trump's. Numbers and enthusiasm. And I'm going to say another thing, which gives me lots of questions about January 6th. It did right from the beginning, which I had some of the answers to right at the beginning, because I was one of the first people to get the Johnson tape. Trump's crowds are peaceful. They're very enthusiastic, but there's rarely even minor incidents in his 20 or 25,000 or 30,000 person crowds.
There's a sense of camaraderie. I've been to a lot of these mayors.
He's a happy campaigner.
Mhm.
You just watch his rallies. I mean, it's half of it's comedy.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing in the latter part of his presidency before the pandemic, he had gotten it down so well, it was like watching a variety television show. I mean, he would do imitations.
Right.
He'd bring people up, tell stories.
Something about he can pack a stadium without a guitar, right?
No, I mean, forget ideology. There is value as a president in being a gifted communicator. Obama had that, which is the major difference. His ideology was the same as this guy. He also had a better brain than this guy. First of all, he had a brain that functioned. Maybe it didn't function in the right ideology, but you can't say that Obama was stupid or demented. Clinton had charisma, and Reagan. I'd say those are the three presidents in the lifetime of the people we're talking to who had charisma. Of course, Kennedy, if people can go back to Kennedy.
That's right. So we'll be in Michigan tomorrow night. That's the state that the president won by 10,000 votes in 2016.
And was
deliver
winning
the White House.
and was winning on 2020 until they stopped the vote count and they chased the Republicans out. And all of a sudden, Biden won. Did you realize that every place they stopped the vote count, every single place, what are the odds of that? Where Trump was ahead by 2.5 to as much as 13 points. In every one of those places, the ultimate result was every single one of them, Biden won.
Well, Mayor, before
I think he what do they call it? He wiped out the board.
We shouldn't get into that right now because we'll be going on 3 hours and 4 hours of America's Mayor Live.
That's true.
And we might lose some people to a long episode, you know? So,
yeah, well, I will take advice from my wise counselors, and we will say goodnight and God bless America and tell you to go to Twitter and sign up for
Super Follow. It's no longer called subscribing. They changed it overnight on us.
Super Followers?
Become a super follower. So there.
Man, I'd like to be a super follower. I may join.
The mayor has.
Can I join my own club?
You can be a super follower. And of course, if you're going to be in Michigan tomorrow, reach out to us. Our audience, of course, knows there's a number of ways to reach us.
What can we tell the restaurant we're going to be at tomorrow night?
We're waiting on that. We will release that information tomorrow.
Okay.
If you're in Metro Detroit, get a hold of us, and we want you
I
there.
told the secret.
The place is.
It's not classified though, so don't put me in jail.
The place is sold out.
I'll give it to the
Every table
archives.
is taken, but we are going to make some
papers.
additional space for our audience. So
number one, I will not hold them back, and number two, I will not let Hunter Biden see them. Here. Okay.
Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. live from the Great Lakes State.
God bless America. Our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze, we are able to apply our God-given common sense. So let's